Have you ever watched a great idea, something with really good intentions, just completely go off the rails? Well, today we're going to unpack why that happens, and more importantly, how you can start to spot the warning signs before it's too late.
You know that feeling, right? A new policy gets rolled out, everyone seems to be on board, but pretty soon, you get this little nagging feeling that something is just off. It's not doing what it promised. That's the exact feeling we're going to dig into today.
And look, let's be super clear about this. This isn't about blaming people or pointing fingers. Most of the time, everyone involved has the best intentions. The problem isn't the people, it's the system itself. It's this quiet, almost predictable drift that pulls good ideas off course.
So first up, let's put a name to that off feeling. What are the actual symptoms that tell you a policy might be starting to drift?
Well, you start to see a few telltale signs. For one, the budget just balloons way past what anyone expected. Then, you realize it needs way more oversight and enforcement than planned, just to keep it going. Pretty soon, a whole new industry of consultants and support systems grows up around it. And the real kicker, after all that, the original problem you were trying to solve is still there. That's usually when you hear someone say, you know what, we just haven't been tough enough yet.
Okay, so if that's what it feels like, how can we actually catch this drift before it goes too far? Well, that brings us to Section 2, the 5 big warning signs. These are the patterns we need to learn to spot.
The very first sign is when a sense of constant crisis takes over. The pressure to act now gets so loud that it completely shuts down the two things you need for a good decision: curiosity and honest feedback.
And you can literally see this shift in the kinds of questions people ask. Early on, it's all about learning, right? Hey, what's actually going on here? Who's this going to affect? But as that pressure cooker environment builds, those questions just vanish. They get replaced with demands like, we have to do something now. The thing is, when you're in crisis mode, you stop learning.
All right, warning signs number 2. This is a classic mental trap we all fall into. We start to confuse how visible a problem is with how big it actually is. Just because we're seeing something all over our news feeds or on TV 24/7 doesn't automatically mean the problem itself is growing, but it sure feels that way.
And this is where the danger really lies. The system stops responding to what's actually most important or widespread. Instead, it starts reacting to whatever's making the most noise. The loudest voices, the angriest headlines. It's a fundamental shift from dealing with substance to just reacting to spectacle.
Now for sign number 3. When a system is under all that pressure we just talked about, punishment often starts to look like the easy, obvious answer. Not because it's actually the most effective way to solve the problem, but because it looks decisive. It sends a strong message.
But look at the chain reaction that so often follows. People don't just stop doing the thing you're punishing, they just get smarter about it. The behavior shifts, it goes underground. This actually concentrates risk in new, sometimes even more dangerous places. So what happens next? Well, now enforcement has to expand to chase this new, hidden behavior, and all the while, the costs just quietly tick upwards.
And that leads us perfectly into the 4th sign, the real costs of a policy. They don't just vanish into thin air. They get displaced. They pop up in completely different budgets, over in policing or the court system or in healthcare. And here's the really crucial part. It's how we start talking about these costs. We stop calling them costs and we start calling them pressure. So a huge spike in court cases isn't seen as a direct result of a policy choice from 2 years ago. No, it's just pressure on the system. And as soon as you frame it that way, it feels random and unavoidable, even if it was a totally predictable outcome.
And the final sign, number 5. This is when the exceptions start making the rules for everyone. A few extreme, highly publicized examples, the ones that are perfect for headlines, start to shape the entire policy, even if they represent a tiny, tiny fraction of what's actually happening.
This quote from the source material just nails it. The goal isn't to design a system that works well for, say, 99% of people anymore. The goal becomes designing a system that doesn't look weak when it's confronted by that 1% extreme case. The optics have officially won.
So we've got the 5 signs, but is there like a single moment where things really start to go wrong? Well, the analysis here points to one quiet but absolutely critical turning point.
This right here, this is the heart of the whole thing. The drift really picks up speed at the exact moment the main question changes. We stop asking the most important question you can ask: is this policy actually working? And instead, we start asking a very different question: what message does this send?
Now don't get me wrong, messages are important, but you can't run a system on messages alone. The second that signaling becomes more important than results, the system just stops learning. It's over.
Okay, so we've seen the patterns, we've seen the pivot point. What on earth can we do about it? Well, this final section isn't about some magic solution. It's about building a better habit of mind. It's called How to Notice Better.
The argument here is that the best response isn't to get louder or to panic. It's actually much quieter. It's about asking better questions. Really simple, but incredibly powerful questions like, hey, what happened the last time we tried something like this? Or, can we figure out where these costs are actually landing? It's about being deeply skeptical of that manufactured urgency. And maybe most importantly, finding ways to make it okay for a policy to be tweaked and adjusted over time, without everyone having to scream that it was a total failure.
And all of this leaves us with a really big question to chew on. Once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. And it makes you wonder, is this kind of drift just an inevitable part of human nature? Or is it actually a flaw in the design of our systems? A flaw that, if we learn to notice it better, we might just be able to fix.